Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for episode 86 of the show. I'm your host, Louise H. Reed, with listeners in over 145 countries and millions of iTunes downloads and ongoing podcasts. I'm the fortunate host here every week to talk life and leadership with ordinary people living extraordinary lives. People who are examples of taking brave, bold action in pursuit of their dreams and goals, and are here to share their journey to help you do the same in yours. You hear me say it every week. Time, there's nothing more valuable than that. And so as my way of saying thank you to you for spending yours with me, I love to have prize giveaways. Each month I have a draw for exclusive Lady Boss Loyalty swag. Simply comment on a podcast episode with the hashtag Lady Boss Loyalty and you are automatically entered into that draw. New swag is coming soon. I've been saying that for a few weeks. I'm saying that in shame. It is coming. I promise you. Stay tuned for the swag, the new swag, and good luck to you. Now, without further ado, let me introduce you to today's guest. We are fortunate today to have a fellow Canadian, Gill. Bean was born in Edmonton to an East Indian family and has 3 crazy siblings. She grew up to become an X-ray technologist whose career was cut short by an unforeseen event that left her paralyzed from the waist down in 2012. Now happily divorced and running a growing nonprofit organization called ReYu Paralysis Recovery Centre, she is changing the way the public sees people with disabilities. She advocates for equality in all aspects and uses her loud voice to raise awareness and create change in the world around her. She is the reigning Miss Wheelchair Canada, won Global's Woman of a Vision Award, was recognized by Mattel as one of Canada's top 60 inspiring women as part of Barbie's 60th anniversary. She's won top 40 under 40 in 2019, and I'm running out of breath here, and RBC's Women of Influence Award in the Ones to Watch category. Seriously, folks, here we have a remarkable woman with us. Welcome to the show, Bean.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
You are so welcome. I think it's pretty clear to everyone listening why I reached out to you when I read about your amazingness in RBC's Women of Influence Award. I think it must have been online. And as I've learned more about you and your story and how you show up in the world and how you are using the challenges that you've experienced in your life to create such amazing change in others, you're an inspiration. So
thank you.
You are welcome, and thank you to you for sharing your time with me. So I imagine when you were a little girl, you were not having dreams of being a Paralysis Recovery Center co-founder.
No.
So let's rewind the clock a little bit and understand more about Little Bean when you were 8 years old. What were your dreams and aspirations?
Well, I was always a boy crazy girl. Since I was born, I was boy crazy. And so that was really my main focus, and fashion was I was always into fashion and looking different and bright colors, and I'm an 80s child, so that shouldn't be a surprise. But on the flip side, I was raised in a very religious household, and my dad was very, very strict, and we had lots of rules, and we weren't allowed to express ourselves through music, through fashion, through anything. Well, I shouldn't say anything, but we were very limited. And so, when I was a little kid, I just knew culturally we're told you're going to grow up, you're going to go to school, you're going to get a job, you're going to get married, you're going to move into your in-laws' house, you're going to have a new family, you're going to have kids, blah, 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 as society teaches most people, right? So that was kind of my idea of my future. Was when I was in elementary, the next step was junior high. After that was high school. After that was NAIT, because my family's not a university family. So I went to NAIT, and I was living a really good life until, DDay.
DDay. And tell us what DDay is for you.
Sure. So Yeah, so I was working as an X-ray tech in the cardiac cath lab. I really loved my job. It was very high stress, high pace, um, but I loved it. Anyways, I had ended up quitting that job because of my manager, and I got a job in a clinic where I quickly became the supervisor of the clinic. And then 2012 hit, which was, and I hope remains to be, the worst year of my life. That January I turned 30, and it's funny because today I got my Facebook memories, and today, eight years ago, was my birthday party.
Oh, wow.
And you know, that was really fun and stuff. And then in April of 2012, so I was married at this point. I got married when I was 25. The marriage was good for 1 year, and then after that it wasn't that good. And it was this year, like 2012, that I was going to leave. I said that was it. I'm definitely leaving this year. I'm not staying in much longer. So in April of 2012, it was Easter long weekend. My husband and I got into a very large fight. We'd both been drinking a lot, and we fought a lot, which resulted in him punching me a couple of times, and throwing me against a wall and cutting my eyebrow open with his ring. That was the night I left. I called my sister, she called my mom, called my brother, my dad, called the police, and I left that night, and then I never looked back. That was the first and last time he raised his hands to me. And I have a zero tolerance policy, and I think all women and men should have a zero tolerance policy where it comes to domestic violence, any violence really.
Yeah.
And, you know, culturally, domestic violence is normal, right? We see so many times, you know, men beat their wives, they beat their kids. We used to get beats when we were kids too, right? I remember, like, we used to be jealous of kids that got grounded because we're like, what? What's that? I wish we got grounded. You know, we never got stuff taken away. We would get hit if we did something bad. And that was just, it was normal life for us and for the people around us, and just culturally it was normal, so we didn't really think it was wrong. Anyways, after I left my ex in April of 2012, I was going to go to Vegas with my friends for her stagette. And so in this wedding, I was a bridesmaid and he was a groomsman. So I didn't want to go to the wedding. I didn't want to be a part of it, but I definitely wanted to go to Vegas. And sorry, I had a phone call come in.
It's all right.
I also wasn't the type of person to talk about my feelings or emotions at all. So I never talked about anything that happened to me. I didn't talk about the domestic stuff. I didn't talk about anything. And instead I tried numbing myself with alcohol, shopping, food, whatever I could find. And I wasn't making good decisions, and I was going down the wrong path. So then while I was in Vegas, actually rewind 2 weeks before I went to Vegas, my dad finally decided to leave our family. And so this probably should have happened 20 years earlier, but it didn't. And so then that's when it happened. And honestly, it wasn't that difficult because everybody was much happier. He was happier. We were happier. It was just so much better. So now 2 weeks later, I'm in Vegas, and I wake up on Friday the 13th. And we were supposed to go to the pool that day. So I woke up, went to the bathroom, brushed my teeth and stuff, washed my face. And I walked over to the windows, opened the curtains, and saw that it was raining outside. I remember thinking, like, when does it rain in Vegas in July? Okay, that's weird. And then I specifically remember walking back to the bed, as that was the last time I ever walked on my own. So I laid back in bed with my friends, and then I had the worst pain I've ever felt in my low back. It was excruciating, and honestly the worst pain I've ever felt. The pain lasted a few minutes, and then I wasn't able to move my right leg. So as I was laying there, I was trying to move both my legs, bend them both up, but only my left leg was bending. So I was flexing my ankle, wiggling my toes, trying to do whatever I could, when a couple minutes later, it went prickly from my hip to my toes, and I was left paralyzed from the waist down within 10 minutes. Now, being an X-ray tech, I was very calm. I have really good critical thinking skills, and I started thinking logically, what is happening in my body? My pain was so low that your spinal cord splits before it gets there, and just things weren't really making sense logically. So then, I called my insurance company, called 911, went to the hospital, and then that's where my story gets very long and complicated.
Wow. And to me, it already sounded complicated.
Yeah. Yep.
So, so much even in what you've just shared, and thank you for your willingness to share it. And I'm curious what's happened that's changed your decision to numb. You admitted, and I think this is very clear in our society, it's also very commonplace and socially acceptable to numb with alcohol, food, and the things that you were talking about. Pornography, like seriously, I was reading a stat the other day, like 80% of kids, boys between the age of, I have 4 boys, so this is why I remembered it, 80% of kids, boys between the age of 14 and 18 watch online porn every day. Great, what we're helping to teach our young men. That's a whole other show. All that to say, numbing behaviors, right?
Yes.
Why did you decide to start talking about these things? And perhaps that came later in your story, but I thought it was really relevant to bring that up because I think all listeners can understand that they may be doing that now, or perhaps they've done that in the past. And I didn't want to overlook that because I think it takes a lot of intent and courage to choose something different. So can you talk to us a little bit about how that changed and why that changed?
Definitely. The reason it changed is I was paralyzed. While I was in the Vegas hospital for 12 days, and there they could find nothing physically wrong with me. Physically, my body was fine. And so the only explanation they had was that it was emotional or mental. So given the year that I had, and given my whole life, and the fact that I had stifled all these emotions and stuff down and not talked about them or addressed them, it made sense to me that I was diagnosed with conversion disorder, which is where you're so stressed out that your brain tells your body to shut down.
Wow.
So, and the only, I was talking to neurologists and stuff down there and to psychologists, and they basically said to me, you need to start seeing a psychologist or a psychiatrist. You need to find whatever mental block you have, unblock it, and then most people will get full recovery within 2 weeks. So that is what really motivated me to be like, okay, I need to get all this stuff out so I can get my body back.
Wow. Talk about motivation right there. So was it like Niagara Falls? Or was it like a trickling like a stream?
No, nope. The dam broke and yep, everything came out.
And from what I understand in how you show up now and the advocate that you are and the work that you do, the dam has never been rebuilt.
No, no, it has not.
And that is great. And thankfully, it has not been rebuilt. Otherwise, we would not be talking right now, and you would not be changing lives in the way that you do at your ReYu Paralysis Recovery Centre. So, recognizing, so you're in the hospital now. You're told, ideally, fingers crossed, this is what it is. Let Niagara Falls happen, and you'll be back to yourself in 2 weeks. Help us understand how you got from there to where you are now.
Okay, yeah, so it's a very complex story, but I'll try to give you just the highlights of it. They wouldn't start any programs while I was down there because they knew I'd eventually have to come back here and then restart again. So I flew back to Canada, to Edmonton, and, most people think we have free healthcare. So awesome. This is where I'm really going to need it. And I went to see the free psychologist. Right when I landed, I went home. The next day we went to the hospital to see a psychiatrist. I waited for 8 hours in the emergency room, and after I talked to the psychiatrist, he basically told me that there's nothing wrong with me, he's not admitting me, and that most people who this happened to have a large monetary gain coming towards them. So he thought I did too. So that really let me down with the whole psychiatry thing, and I left the hospital. So I decided to, I was like, okay, I'm going to find a community psychologist who the government, the healthcare will pay for. And so I did, and I didn't get an appointment with them until mid-August, and this was in July. And I was like, I don't have a month to waste. I got to start seeing somebody now. So I looked up private psychologists in the community. I found this one lady who had really good reviews and stuff. And so I went to go meet with her at Creating Solutions. Her name's Sharon, and she is absolutely amazing. I still see her to this day.
Shout out to Sharon.
Yeah, shout out to Sharon. At that time, I was seeing her twice a week because we thought this was conversion and I needed to unlock this stuff. And as you can probably assume, I had a lot to talk about. And, in the meantime too, I was also seeing hypnotherapy. I went and saw a natural healer who ended up giving me 3 first-degree burns and didn't heal me. And, I was going to physio twice a week. I was doing all this stuff because my body was disintegrating. And at this time too, I did not have control of my bowel or my bladder. And that is a really hard thing to wrap your head around and to really come to terms with. And so, one of my first thoughts actually when I was paralyzed, because I was newly single, was who's going to date me? Mm-hmm. Who's going to date a girl in a wheelchair? That was one of my first thoughts. And I was like, this is my opportunity to find somebody and actually be really happy. And now, like, who's going to date me? Turns out a lot of people will. So there's a positive note to that story. But that was one of my biggest concerns. Right. And that back then I didn't know. Anyways, it wasn't until, so in mid-August too, my leg started spasming like crazy, and my family doctor was like, this is not conversion. This is not what it presents like, sending you for another MRI. At this point, I've already had about 30 MRIs, so I was like, okay, well, this isn't going to show anything either. So I went for that MRI, and it did show something. It said, I got the report, and it said, there's a lesion in the spinal cord at T10, T11, looks like transverse myelitis. So obviously, next thing I Googled transverse myelitis, and I knew that directly translated, it means inflammation of the spinal cord at a certain level. Mm. And luckily, mine's at T10, T11, which is lower, so I have my full use of my hands and my arms. But they also said that, when you have TM, it's 1 lesion. As soon as you have 2 lesions, you're diagnosed with MS. And that was really hard for me to understand. And, MS hits healthy 30-year-old women, and Alberta has the highest rate of MS in North America. So that really scared me and also tipped me over the edge into a really deep, dark depression.
So much happening to such a young person. What have you learned from this? I'm sure there's a lot. I write a book. I mean, seriously.
So much. Yeah.
I ask that. It sounds sort of. It sounds almost a bit cliche to be asked. No, what did you learn from that? But at the same time, I think that there are lessons everywhere. Many lessons we wish we never had to get.
Yep.
But I think, So what are some of the highlights that you really feel like you've taken away?
Definitely, like, a lot of my paradigm got shifted. Right. When I was really depressed, I ate a lot. I gained a lot of weight really, really quickly, which really did not help with my self-esteem and my self-worth and how I saw myself. But, I got into the Glenrose Hospital, which was the rehab hospital here. And that's when they weighed me, and I really realized how much I weigh. And so I told them to restrict my food. They were in control of it, so they had to restrict it. And so I started losing weight, not rapidly, but, I started being more cognizant of that. And that was also when I met this woman who literally changed my life. We were having lunch one day. It was me, myself, my roommate, who was also paraplegic like me, and another young girl who was a high-level quadriplegic. And so we were having lunch together, and the girl who was a quadriplegic says, "Will either of you guys walk again?" And my roommate, she's like, "Well, this bitch will." And we laughed and stuff, right? Because, but I was overcome with guilt. And Oksana, the quadriplegic woman, says, "I'd be happy if I could move a fucking finger." So it was that instant that my paradigm shifted. I went from being sad about everything that I lost to being grateful for what I had. And, she's on our board of directors today because ReYu would not have even existed or even begun to happen had she not said those words and changed my mind about my life and my situation. And, sometimes I feel bad telling this part of the story because, it sucks that it takes seeing somebody who's in a worse situation than you to really value what you have. But, it kind of is what it is. And I don't take her for granted, and I try not to take anything else for granted. So that was one of the huge lessons I learned. I started living a life of gratitude. I still to this day write in my gratitude journal every single day. And because you have to, right? And my hands, these are in there at least once a week, because without these, I would not be able to do 90% of the things that I do. I also started to prioritize fun. I said, if I'm not having fun, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And so everything that I do has to be fun. And, that's kind of excluding taxes and like the adulting things that you have to do, right? Because that's never fun. But, you have to do it. So like the majority of everything else that I do has to be fun.
80% of your time, you would say, that, at the end of every week, it's like, yeah, I'm having fun. This is a fun life. This is a well-lived life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, those are like the big lessons that I've learned, right? And that, everybody has a story. Everyone's going through struggles and adversity, and it's really like how you choose to face it. And over the last couple of months, I've had a lot of clarity, and I've learned another big valuable lesson in like trusting your gut. Mm. And really listening to yourself, because your heart does know more than what your brain does, and our brain does sabotage us on numerous occasions. And I listen to this positive affirmation. I have a playlist that I listen to every morning, but one of them says, listen to your heart because your brain is stupid, right? And it says, since conception, your heart forms first. Your heart forms before your brain does. Your heart is, way more powerful than your brain is. But in this Western society, we are taught, don't listen to that. Your brain is intellectual. Show me the intellectual facts before I'm going to listen to my emotions. And so I've really learned to see my emotions, feel them, and really just acknowledge them. That's what I've been really focusing on in the last couple of months here.
And was what prompted that, or is this just part of an ongoing sort of evolution of being?
Oh goodness!
There's a big story behind that.
There's a bazillion stories. Yes.
I love stories. All right,
go. Okay, so like I said, I have more adversity in my life than the average citizen, and I've really come to terms with that in the last few months as well. My intention for this year is to respond, not react. And I'm really working hard to do that in all aspects. But what really prompted all of this inner change in me is that I was having a big, huge split in my life. I was not grounded. And in August of this past year, I found out I was in part of a romance scam. And it was devastating. And on many levels, it was devastating. And the day I found out, I went and looked for pills to take because I didn't want to live anymore. And dating is hard enough. When you add a wheelchair into it, it is a bajillion times harder. And I had finally felt like I found my boyfriend, like this is it, blah, blah, blah. And then I find out, oh, nope, he was just stealing my identity to rack up thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in my name. So that's another fun story. And like I just said, all this shit just happens to me. And so I have to learn to deal with it. On the grand scheme of things, though, like the worst thing that happened to me so far is that I got paralyzed. So if anything is less than that, I don't really care. Small potatoes to me. Credit, shmed it, I don't care.
I really, so I'm sorry that happened. How can I not feel that way? I've said it already, but it just is worth saying again. I just really appreciate how open you are in sharing this, because we've not spoken before, and here you are putting all of this out there, all of it, so willingly for the benefit of others being able to learn and perhaps not feel so alone in their own challenges. And so your bravery, courage, and your humor, and that spark, I said to you just before we started to record this, your spirit is as bright as the sweater that you have on. And it's really humbling to hear how grounded you are, how inspirational you are, and yet how in tune with what reality is. It's all of those things that you embody. And that's a really, really unique kind of blend and balance, which I'm sure from day to day there'll be,
no balance. There's no balance.
I guess it's, you know what? Yeah, because balance doesn't exist. It's like an integration of it, right? And there's an ebb and a flow of it all.
Yeah, definitely.
Something that I have learned through, well, first of all, sorry, before I go there, we're recording this show on Bell Let's Talk Day. So I wanted to acknowledge that. When folks are listening to the show, it's going to be past. It's not going to be Bell Let's Talk Day, but I wanted to bring that up because of, I've talked, you've shared with us about mental health. I too have experienced mental health challenges over the years. And so it is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. It's something that I wrestle with daily myself. And I know what I need to do in an attempt to mitigate a downward sort of spiral. And so just wanted to acknowledge that and give a shout out to Bell Let's Talk Day.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't even realize that is today, but well, that's good. That's good. It's a good coincidence.
Yes, it is a good coincidence. And while I do love, this is a bit tangential, and while I do love all of these days that recognize and honor all sorts of different important days and events, I kind of it's hard to keep track of them all.
I know, it really is.
It really is. So I also wanted just to emphasize a couple of things that you mentioned that I think are worth emphasizing for our listeners, is how you started practicing gratitude every day. It's something that I know I talk about a lot, and an attitude of gratitude, as well as the actual practice of being grateful and writing those things out. And prioritizing fun. I would love to challenge my listeners in at the end of a week, take note of the things that made your heart sing, heart smile, soul dance. Did you have some fun? And if not, what can you do next week to insert a little more fun in your day? Okay, so where do we go next? I'm interested in exploring how you got into this business. Clearly, you're in the healthcare field.
Yes.
As an X-ray tech.
Yeah.
So you've got some expertise in that area. How did you come to be running your own recovery center?
Well, so I was paralyzed, and I do have a lot of spasticity, which means just a lot of spasms in my muscles. And at that time, I had a lot of extensor tone, which means everything goes straight. So your quads, your calves, your toes point, all the way up into your back muscles, where I used to either flip backwards out of my chair or slide forwards out of my chair. with that extensor tone, my legs actually grew 3 inches. And I've been 5'4" my whole life, and now I'm 5'7".
Congratulations.
I know. I was like, this is crazy. But anyways, I was doing lots of physio and stuff because I needed to reconnect my body and stuff. But I just wasn't getting the results I wanted. And I ended up going to California to a place called Project Walk, which was a spinal cord injury recovery center. There was also one in Regina that I went to first, the First Steps Wellness Center, and one in Calgary. When I went to California, the results I saw at the end of that first week were incredible. Like, you know, I had gone my whole year without anybody being able to get my ankles to 90 degrees with my knees straight. And there on the first Friday of my week, like the end of the first week there, they had me standing on my flat feet. Wow. So I was like, okay, sold, right? And
there's something here.
Yes, and all it is exercise, regular exercise. And I've been working out since I was 12 years old because growing up, my nickname was Morti, which means fat girl. And amongst my sisters, I was the fat one. And that's how I was raised. And obviously that created some more issues there.
That too. Mm-hmm.
Right? Yes. But I turned to working out, and I'm really glad that I did because my muscle memory has really, really helped me in my recovery. So anyways, while I was in California, I was going to get a home program from them, and all of the trainers there are kinesiologists. So I Googled the U of A here in Edmonton, found the faculty of phys ed, and I knew I wanted a kinesiology student to help me with my home program in Edmonton. So they found out my information, and Nancy was one of the people who responded back to me. And she has always wanted to do this kind of work. She just didn't know she could do it in Canada because there aren't very many centers here. And so when we met, it was kind of like divine intervention because both of us are like complete opposites, polar opposites, but we worked very well together. And so I ended up going back to California 6 months later, and she came with me for a week. We did the Train Your Trainer program. And she was still in school, but she was coming to my house 5 days a week. We were working out 3 to 4 hours every day. And on top of that, I was going to the gym. I was doing yoga. I was doing a bazillion other things. But my recovery was incredible. Like, I had gained so much of my core control back. I got my bladder back. I got my bowel back. I got so much of my legs. I was standing. I was starting to walk on my own. My right leg was bending and a little bit more independent, but my left leg wasn't yet. And it is just like continually, and even I'm 7.5 years out now, and it's still continually getting better. And so we knew that there was a need for a center here. We talked about it since we met. I actually brought back franchise papers from Project Walk in California, but that just wasn't the way to go. And so, you know, I wasn't in the right mental headspace for this, and the universe was just like, it's not ready, it's not time. And then in 2016, Nancy got a full-time job offer from a facility in Florida. And she really wanted to go, but I really didn't want her to go. And so she said, well, okay, if I'm going to stay here, we're going to do something worthwhile, and it's got to work. So I was like, okay, let's do it. So we found a marketing agency run by all women, and they took us on pro bono. They gave us our name and our tagline. We found a law firm to take us on to do our registration. We found a graphic designer to give us our logo. And by April 2017, ReYu Paralysis Recovery Centre was open, and we had one client. And it was, you know, it was pretty cool. And by the end of the first month, we had 6 clients. Wow. 3 months later, we had to hire a staff member. 3 months after that, we hired another staff member. We outgrew that space in 6 months, but had to stay there for 18. You know, it's just insane how fast everything blew up. The media coverage we got was incredible. And, you know, as soon as we got our first little kid with spinal cord injury, that's when it took off, because everybody loves kids and puppies.
It's true.
Yeah.
And you know, I really believe that when you find the space that you're meant to be in, things take off like that.
100%.
The frustrating part can be in life is that you want that. High achievers want that sooner. It's like, okay, I'm ready. Okay, I'm ready. Where is it? And you push and grasp and reach, and that's not your door.
Nope.
It's
No,
not
and
your
that's when you learn the hard lessons until you find the right place where you're supposed to be.
right.
Right? Yep.
Yeah, been there for sure. How rewarding! Like a huge congratulations to you.
Thank you.
It's ridiculously exciting to be doing something that has such personal meaning and obviously so meaningful for everyone who walks through that door. What's your hope and dream for this center?
I've always said that I want to change the world, and we're slowly doing that. I want to change the stigma of people with disabilities. I will always fight for equality and inclusion. You know, being born with dark skin, I've had racial slurs thrown at me my whole life, and I've always been discriminated against, and it's given me this thick skin. But now with a disability, that's like the trifecta of discrimination, right? I'm a woman, dark skin, disability. But I'm going to try to use it to my advantage, and I will try to educate as many people as I can about the world of this disability and how we are just regular people too. And we don't want pity. We don't want sympathy. We want to be treated like regular people. We want to be able to access everything like regular people. We want to be able to be included in conversations, in policy, in education, in any kind of area where able-bodied people are, disabled people should be there too, because all in all, we're all people, which is a very simple concept, but very difficult for people to grasp.
It is, isn't it? Because there are layers of complexity to that in terms of how our society, it was built by able-bodied white men.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, to your point, the more, I hate to say it, the more categories one may sort of associate with from a diversity perspective, the greater the layers of challenge. I love how you said that you're going to use those to your advantage. Like, talk about stepping into, this is another kind of cliche or cheesy, but talk about stepping into your power, right? Or taking ownership for what you can do, not what you can't. And that kind of mindset, that changes lives. That changes the world.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, I don't know. I feel, that's one of the reasons why I was paralyzed, right? Is to change these things. And the way you do that is through sharing your story and being vulnerable and being real in a world where we talked about this earlier, in an Instagram world where everything's filtered, everything's fake lips, fake lashes, fake brows, fake fillers, fake boobs, fake butts. Like, what's real? What are real people actually like? 90% of the population is still real, and 90% of us, well, 100% of us face adversity, but a lot of people aren't willing to talk about it or acknowledge it or share it with others. And oh no. Oh no.
I can still hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
My phone just blocked out.
You were like, I felt like you left me on I was on the edge of something really good.
Oh goodness, sorry, my phone just froze.
No, that's okay.
And left me out.
I love that about, being vulnerable and being real and being willing to share your story. Why do you think that there's so much fear around that?
Because people care what other people think. And in our culture, that's very, very prominent, is what will other people say. In Punjabi, the saying is, "Log ki kahenge," and that means, what will they say? And, I was raised in a household where my mom always said, no, but who cares what other people think, right? And it's funny because sometimes she's a hypocrite about that too. But I think we all are, right?
It's okay, Mom.
Yeah, it's okay. Because on some level, we do care what other people think. And for me, it's like, yes, I've made these mistakes. Yes, I've learned from them. And that's why I say I'm happily divorced, because I don't regret it. I've learned so much about myself. The only thing I do regret is giving in my prime years that I call from 25 to 30 to him. And so that's one thing that I do regret. But I don't regret the experiences and the self-reflection and the education that I got about myself in these experiences. So, you know, and so many of us feel the same way, but we're also told to feel shame about a lot of things, right? Especially as women. You're not allowed to own up about it. You're not allowed to talk about this because it's your fault. When it's not. 100% it's not most of the time, right? But we're told as a society and through marketing and through generations that you don't talk about these things. This stuff stays in our family. Nobody else needs to talk about it. To the outside world, we need to look like the perfect family living the perfect life. Who lives the perfect life? Nobody.
I'm going to out my mom here. Bless her heart. She doesn't listen to the show, I don't think. And if you are, Mum, thank you. And I love you. I've actually had her on the show. She's someone I look up to very much. So I have throughout my whole life. But with that said, very much the, you know, having people over, don't go into the living room because we need to see the vacuum marks still. Yeah. And, you know, again, people coming over and someone used the downstairs washroom, God forbid, you know, they're not allowed to do that, right? Until the he has arrived. And thankfully she's evolved since then. Society is evolving, but it's still really, really slow. It's still really slow. I'm wondering what piece of advice, because of what you've been through just personally, but then also taking such courageous action in saying, yes, let's do this, and opening up the rehab center. What advice would you have what advice would you give to women about overcoming fear? What would you like to pass on to other professionals?
Oh boy, good question. You know, I don't really think too much about fear. Obviously, it's always in the back of my head, like, what if this fails? What if this doesn't work, right? But what the bigger voice in my head is saying is, this is going to work. You are going to make a difference. You will change the world. And I think we need to keep feeding that voice. And what I do personally to do that is, you know, I listen to a nighttime meditation before I sleep. I listen to positive affirmations in the morning. I listen to this Darren Daly. He's a success coach through email. He sends a video every morning. So I listen to that when I brush my teeth. I try to listen to podcasts that are inspiring, and some that are sad, and some that are just, you know, real people telling their stories, right? Because hearing other people being vulnerable and hearing other people share their stories gives me the strength to be like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it too.
I love
that. I feel like people should, you know, think about things that way too.
There's a story around, I think it might be an Indigenous story. Wow, this is really bad, that I can't even recall it properly, or the history of it. But the story is essentially a boy went to his grandfather, and the grandfather with a question, with a concern, and the grandfather said, it talked about having two wolves inside every person. A bad wolf and a good wolf, or a negative wolf and a positive wolf. And essentially the boy asked, well, how do you know which one wins? And the grandfather said, it depends, whichever one you feed. And so I just totally slaughtered that story. It's far better. If you want to Google it, like the two wolves or something, Google it, friends. It's way better than what I just said. But all that to say, I bring this up because I really want to hit home how much intent it takes for you to feed your good wolf, right? And so this ability to have this strong, kick-ass mindset that allows you to show up in your business the way that you are is because you're feeding it all of these things at nighttime, you know, with your meditation, the positive affirmations in the morning, the video you watch in the morning, your gratitude, prioritizing fun, all of this stuff is what sets someone up, sets you up.
Yeah. And it takes effort, right? And, you know, it's another cliche thing that people say, you know, you get 10 compliments in one day and you put one person says something negative to you. What you're going to focus on is that one negative thing, right? It's 100% correct. So if you think about our daily lives and how much information we're inundated with on a daily basis through social media, through marketing, through whatever, we subconsciously connect to the negative things. We remember the negative things and we dwell on it, whether we think we are or not. It's constantly running in our head. So until we are intentionally putting positive thoughts in our head and feeding the good wolf, right? That negativeness will always be there. And I call it the darkness, because it is, and to me, what I envision looks like Venom, from Spider-Man Venom.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it looks like to me, always trying to grasp at me and always trying to pull me in. And this is a daily battle. And if I don't do my personal things that I need to do, trust me, I feel it. And sometimes I want to give into it because it's easier. But to me, that's just not an option.
I so love hearing all of that. I think success, as we were talking about, success on the outside, as seen by others, looks easy.
Yeah.
And I love how you sort of pull back the curtain and expose that it is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is intentional and it takes daily effort. It's a daily decision to do this. And so those of you listening who are wondering where to start, I think that I know Bean has mentioned a variety of things that she does. Choose one of those things. Just choose one. Start really, really, really small. Yep. Choose one. And then add another one in a month's time. Like, just do that every day for a month until it becomes a habit, and then add the next thing.
Yep.
I do find that people tend to jump in off the deep end, to like jump right into the deep end and say, okay, I'm going to do all the things. And then
you're gonna burn yourself out.
Yeah. So friends, don't do all the things. Be kind to yourself and choose one little thing.
One thing at a time. Yeah.
One thing at a time, and you will get there. The last question I have for you, even though there's so much more I want to ask, is regarding persons with disabilities and just raising awareness and doing more for the community to better all Canadians, because it does better all Canadians and it does better all workplaces. The data's in, friends. Like, the facts are in. So what message are you wanting to get out to others, or what can we do as individuals in our community, whether in Canada or in the United States, wherever you are? What's this small thing that we can do that, if each of us did, would really start to move the needle and make a difference?
A very small thing that I think every person is capable of doing is to acknowledge people with disabilities. And it doesn't mean you have to go running up to them and telling them that they're an inspiration or that they're doing great for going in the grocery store, but it can be just as simple as a smile, making eye contact. I get ignored a lot because people don't know how to act around people with disabilities. And there's a few different ways that people react to me. One is the pity, sympathy look. Two is somebody coming up to me and congratulating me for doing a daily activity, or just telling me that I'm inspiring because I'm in the mall or doing something. And three is complete ignoring. Right? I can tell when someone's staring at me. I know, you know when someone's looking at you.
You can feel it.
You look at them, you make eye contact for a second, and then they're just darting away. Right? And it's just okay, like, I'm here, man. Right? But just, treating people how you treat people. I get asked quite often, how do I talk to somebody with a disability? My answer is, how do you talk to an able-bodied person? That's exactly how you talk to somebody with a disability. Hey, what's your name? Where are you from? What do you do for work? Do you have any kids? Right? What do you stand on politics? What's your Capricorn? What's your astrology sign? Like, we're normal people. And, the stigma is there. The stigma is real, but the stigma needs to go away. And the only way that happens is by people shifting their mind about people with disabilities. Yes, there are people with very severe disabilities. Everything is on a spectrum, but the first word I use there is people, because they are a person too. And whether they are cognitively there or not, they still deserve respect. They still deserve dignity. And that's where humanity kind of drops them off, because they don't feel that they do deserve that. And if we can just change our mindset about that, I think that will have a huge ripple effect in their circles of their own lives and in our population as a whole.
What a great message, and some really easy takeaways for listeners to reflect on. and to share. And I encourage you, I know lots of my listeners have families. Talk about this at the dinner table. Ask your kids about it.
Yeah.
I think kids are far more curious, you know, and parents are curious and kind, not always, but generally kind.
Yeah.
I see parents shying kids away from, oh, don't look, you know.
Yes.
Well,
and that's really where the stigma starts. That's where fear starts. And this has happened to me numerous times where I'm a kid magnet. Kids always come up to me and, you know, they just want to know, like, what is that? Why are you in a wheelchair? Right? And I'll just tell them, you know, I got really sick one time and my legs stopped working. And it's always the parents that are like, oh, no. Like, don't ask, don't touch, whatever, right? And I'll often say to the parents, like, I would rather your kid ask me and I tell them the truth than you go around the corner and tell them a lie. And also, by you reacting to your kid this way elicits the fear response. So now they've associated people with disabilities with fear. And that's how the stigma starts, and that's how it grows. And so kids have questions, and yes, some people with disabilities are offended, and yes, they are grumpy people sometimes, but the majority of us are not. And so and we understand kids ask questions, right? And so most people will just answer the question. So don't be afraid.
So have the conversation, friends. That's another challenge that I have for you. And I would love to hear how those conversations go. Thank you, Bean, so much. It has been really a pleasure getting to know you a little bit and getting to share your badassery with my listeners. And of course, even more so, thank you for your time. I know it's precious, and you have
no problem.
Yeah.
My phone is actually going to die in 30 seconds.
Okay. So with that said, the timing is perfect. So I also want to say thank you to all of you, my loyal listeners and friends, and remind you that information about my radio show and my guests can be found at louisehreed.com. In the show notes, I will put links so you can reach out to Bean, so you can find Bean.
Please do.
Read about her, learn about what amazing things that she is doing at her recovery center. So please check out the show notes. Finally, a big shout out to my producer, Cameron Steele at Contact Talk Radio Network. This show would not happen without you. So much gratitude to you. So until next week, friends, I'm Louise H. Reed, wishing all of you a bold and courageous day. Goodbye.